Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, we've been talking a lot about the workplace lately, haven't we? And my goodness, I am excited and slightly terrified about the topic we're going to simplify today because the gal who I have found is an incredible thought leader in the space. She wrote a book about it, my goodness. And we're going to talk about how to survive a toxic workplace. And I think, a lot of times in this day and age, I have teenagers at home. The word toxic gets thrown around a lot. So we're actually going to really simplify it down. What does it actually mean? And how do you navigate those waters if that is, in fact, where you work at as well? My special guest today, her name is Theresa Chilcoat. She's the founder of Inner Authority Co., and she's also a human resources strategist with more than 15 years of experience in employee relations and leadership development. She's helped executives, managers, and employees navigate conflict, culture change, and burnout recovery to build healthier workplaces. She's also the author of Surviving the Toxic Workplace from an Insider, HR Insider, How to Reclaim Your Power, Peace, and Happiness, and leads her Bold Roadmap workshop on self-awareness, authentic leadership, and sustainable success. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Theresa Chilcoat. Hey, Terry, how's it going?
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
I'm thrilled to have you here. And again, this is not an easy topic. So
no, it's not.
Why don't we simplify straight out the gate?
Sure.
What actually defines a toxic workplace? And how can someone tell if they're in one or not?
That's a great question. And there's the legal definition, and then there's like the personal definition. Mm-hmm. And I think from an HR standpoint, that's where a lot of people get caught up in it is, well, you're not really in a toxic environment because legally it's not toxic. Well, when someone is going through something where they feel like they're being intimidated, manipulated, living in fear, dreading going to work, I don't think it's anyone's right to tell somebody legally it's not toxic, therefore you're not experiencing a toxic workplace. I think there are levels of toxicity that might or might not be of a legal standard. So from a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, and that's where I think a lot of people get hung up on it is, well, if it's not legally a toxic work environment, then it can't be. But that's not true because there's a very high bar that has to be reached to justify or say that legally you are in a toxic work environment. And as we know, it doesn't matter to the person that's experiencing it. We are human beings and we all go through things and have a different lens how we see through life. And what I might think is toxic, you might not think is toxic. Or you could be someone that's being singled out and you're going to have a completely different experience than, say, your coworkers. Yeah. So from a very basic standpoint, what I break down in the book is somebody that literally feels like they dread going to work. They don't feel that they can be themselves. They don't feel that they can speak up and be heard, seen, and appreciated and respected at the workplace.
Yeah. And then on the legal standpoint, that kind of tiptoes into spaces of like discrimination or physical.
Title VII. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Give us more insights on that side of the coin.
Mm-hmm. To prove that something is a toxic work environment, you have to have a lot of documentation from a legal standpoint. You have to provide that you are part of a category, Title VII, so race, color, creed, religion, gender, whatever. So you have to be in one of those boxes. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot to carry. It's not bad enough you're going through it, but then to try to prove from a legal standpoint, that's where it becomes even more overwhelming. And I think a lot of people don't report it, or if they do to HR, a lot of times maybe they're dismissed that it's not as bad as you think it is because you're a white male or you're under 30 or 40, therefore you don't meet the criteria for a toxic work environment based on Title VII. So there's a lot of nuances that go into it, but it doesn't negate the fact that somebody is living in an environment that they don't feel like they can be themselves.
Right. And I mean, on the extreme side, we're talking about bullying, discrimination,
Exactly.
assault, emotional or physical,
Yes.
those kinds of very serious things that shouldn't be overlooked. But
Yes.
I think there's also death by a thousand paper cuts,
A
right?
hundred
It's
percent.
the microaggressions, the passive
Yes.
aggressiveness, the offhand, backhand
Yes.
remarks. Those are
A
also
hundred
things
percent.
that add up, don't they?
100%. And that's where, when I was researching the book, I found that PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, is something somebody in the workplace can suffer, not just somebody in the military or a first responder. It is somebody that, like you're saying, goes through these. It could be something that's very abrupt and overpowering to the system, but it could be, like you're saying, small microaggressions over a period of time that actually can build up into the psyche of somebody to where they are now walking around in the fight or flight mode. They're stressed all the time. And that's when it really starts tipping into, my life is now being disrupted by work. It's spilling into my personal life. I can't turn off leaving the office. I can't turn off those comments. I can't turn off those emails. And that's when it just becomes so overpowering to where now your whole life revolves around, what am I going through at work? And then it affects your family, your friends, your ability to function, your ability to be effective in your job, and to show up as yourself and feel comfortable.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about my journey over the last year or so of writing my book is the clearest thing that I learned is, we tend to write about things that really affected us. So
Yes.
we want to create tools and playbooks and give people the tools that they can, so they don't have to hit that suffering. So I have to ask
Exactly.
the quiet thing out loud to you right now. Like, what
Yeah.
was your personal breaking point, and
Yeah.
what made you decide to, write this as a book?
Yeah. Well, ironically, I was subjected to a toxic workplace in the HR department, which that in itself just seems crazy. But to not have any resources, I did not feel I could talk to anybody since I was HR. Yes, I could have called an ethics line or I could have called the compliance line, but the people that I was being subjected to were in the executive team. So I have done thousands of interviews, researching investigations into all kinds of complaints, harassment, toxic work environment, you name it. Being in HR for over a decade, I know how these play out. And I knew that more than likely what I was going through would be either minimized or I would be looked like I was the crazy person. So it got to the point where I ended up just quitting after 3 months because I didn't have any resources. And I felt that for my sake of my mental health is that I just have to check out. I can't continue. And it was even more disheartening for me as an HR professional. I thought I was very strong, resilient. Knew and been through it on the other side. But then to be that actual person, that was like soul sucking to find myself. Like I didn't even know who I was at the end when I left because I had been so beaten down psychologically and questioning my ability to do my job. My confidence was eroded. I just felt absolutely lost. And to have something happen that quickly was just very disorienting.
Yeah. And I imagine people that are listening to us right now, if you have ever felt that way at work, go ahead and raise your hand right now. It makes me sad when I hear stories about this. And it happens and it's more prevalent than I think a lot of people realize,
It is. And I realize that too, is that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book is how many people never came to me, how many people never spoke up to HR or anybody and suffered in silence and felt like they didn't have any resources. So that's one of the reasons I wrote this is I didn't have any resources. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't have any resources or didn't. And if I can just help one person feel like they have some control or agency what they're going through, that's my goal, is just to be able to help somebody.
Yeah. And I mean, if you don't work in HR and know, the inner workings of how it works, can you kind of simplify or describe the employee relations team, what are called the ER managers? What do they do at a company?
So in my past history, and this is where HR gets the bad fat, the rap is, oh, HR is always about the team, the company. They're not about the team or the employees. But in all actuality, my goal has always been to be like the mediator to try to bring cohesiveness between the company and the employee and find ways to bridge. Obviously, my job is to protect the company if there's somebody that is blatantly doing something illegal or creating some type of environment that would put a liability on the company. But I also am an advocate for the employee. And it's a very delicate balance to walk because there are times when an employee obviously thinks that I'm not being treated fairly, but they're not looking at their own behavior. But normally when an investigation would happen is either, depending on the company, would be a compliance call or a hotline call. Sometimes somebody would come to you directly to, wage a complaint. And then my response would be to take their statement, talk to them about what parties are involved, and then speak to any witnesses that they may be mentioned, and then speak to other third parties that may be on the team or in that environment that are familiar with the two parties that are working together, and then speak to the alleged offender and speak to them and find out what their side of the story is, and then come to a consensus of, where's the truth in between both things. And then depending on how the conversation goes, if more information comes out that somebody else has more relevant information, then you would talk to that one. So it's kind of like being a detective where you're kind of unwrapping the layers and finding out what really is the truth, where it really is this person really just a disgruntled employee, or does this person have a legitimate concern for their well-being?
Yeah. And I would hope to believe that people who work in employee relations genuinely are people who want to get to the root cause of what's, the issue at stake, what's causing the friction, in order to, in your words, mediate it and resolve it. Something you said earlier stuck in with, and I want to go back to it. You found yourself acting in ways that you didn't recognize. And I want to really dig into this because I have experienced this both firsthand as me doing doing and saying things that were like, whoa, who was that? And then also witnessing others do that at work. So when people go into that kind of survival mode or reactive mode, what's actually happening internally that causes them to act out of character, in your opinion?
That is an awesome question. It's actually very biological. So when we are calm, rational, we are functioning in the prefrontal lobe of our brain. And we make decisions that are rational. We take time to think through things. However, when you are stressed out, you are in fight or flight. You go into the lizard brain, which is in the very stem of the body, and you are literally not thinking rationally or logically anymore. You are literally in fight or flight. Think about if you were being chased by a lion. That is where your body is living. And you're not being chased by a lion, that energy goes somewhere, and usually you end up storing it in your body. And time over time, it ends up costing, it basically is stored in the body. And this has happened to me. I ended up getting adrenal fatigue. So it's like pushing the gas, but having the brake on the same time, is that my body is absolutely overflooded with all of these emotions and chemicals from being in fight or flight for so long that your body actually starts shutting down. Your body just is now in an autoimmune response because of the amount of stress you're putting on your whole entire body. So you are not in your right frame of mind when you're in that type of frame.
Yeah. And this is kind of vulnerable, but I'll just say it. Like, I have been in this situation before at a workplace where a situation where somebody had pushed some buttons and said some things. And I literally was like, I just got so triggered, and it was not in a one-on-one privately. Yeah. There were 2 or 3 other people in the room, and I know that I lost it. I look back and I cringe on that moment because
Yes.
I just like, I don't know. I like to think
Yes.
99.9% of the time I'm a pretty calm, cool, collected, centered kind of person. But in that 0.1%, man, I lost all function,
Oh,
and
you're human.
ugh, it sits with me years and years
I
later. I
know.
was like, I wish I did that differently. I wish. But you have in the book a 4-step response. Like, so you
Yes.
find yourself in your lizard
Mhm.
brain and you want to go on attack mode. Talk us through the
Yes.
4-step
Mhm.
response system.
So what is the most important thing is to being self-aware, like you're talking about being in it, but it's really, really hard to take yourself out and be aware of how you're responding because you're not thinking rationally, you're not being logical about what you're doing. So the most important thing is coming back to your breath and learning how to breathe. It's a 4-part breath that you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. Basically, it stimulates the vagus nerve in our body that brings down the parasympathetic nervous system, starts reactivating. So that way you start feeling calm. So that's when you run into the bathroom and you start breathing. Because when you're
Mm-hmm.
in it, you can't react. Like you cannot be effective. It's taking that moment, having the self-awareness between the trigger, the pause and the trigger. Like, where am I going to find that deep part of me where I can just walk away slowly, just don't engage. But it's being self-aware. And then
Yeah.
once you're self-aware, then you can control your response. So self-control. And that's where your power lies, is if you don't allow people to rattle you, you don't allow them to get in your head, that's where your peace comes from. And that's where happiness comes from. But it's first being aware. If you're not aware, then all bets are off. You can't take care of yourself. You can't find your calm. You can't find your peace. You won't find your control, and you won't find your happiness without self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. So step 1, self-awareness. Step 2,
Yes,
self-control.
control. And then
Step
step
3,
3 is self-care, which is so important. And that's not just bubble baths and, candles. These are boundaries that are firm, that you hold, and don't apologize for it. Don't feel guilty. That was a really hard thing for me because grow up being a people pleaser, is actually being okay with saying no and not having to justify why I'm saying no.
mm-hmm.
And then being able to say no and be okay with I used to feel guilty for saying no, but now I realize no is important because I have to honor that time and space I need to recharge and
And
recognize that.
so if I'm in the heated moment and we're, it's starting to turn into a shouting match, is self-care simply just saying, hey, you know what? I need to put a pin in this and I'm going to
Yes.
come back to this conversation in 10 minutes, 30 minutes tomorrow. Something as simple as that as well.
100%. You are right. So if you have enough self-awareness that you can say, I am losing control.
Yeah.
I need to take care of myself in this moment, take myself out of it.
Yeah.
That's 100%. That is a form of self-care because you're recognizing right now, I am not in the frame of mind and I need to take myself out and move to a place where I can get back to a calm, rational mind.
Yeah. Okay. So step 4 is self-empowerment. Tell me
Yep.
more.
So that's when you are practicing your self-awareness, self-control, self-care. And then once you start doing that consistently, then you'll start feeling more empowered. You'll feel like you have agency. You'll feel like you have some say that's what's happening in your life, regardless of what chaos is going on around you. You don't let it rattle you as much. Mm-hmm. You don't allow these things to upset you as much. And when you can get to that point in life, that's when you start to feel more confident. You feel empowered to make decisions and feel that from a place of confidence. Instead of being reactive, you're being proactive.
Mm-hmm. And in your opinion, is this the job of the organization to fix, or is it the job of the individual to fix, or maybe both?
Honestly, I think it's both. We need to come together as a partnership, but I think there's been it's not 50-50. I think there's been, organization, HR, leader, it's your responsibility to make me happy. Mm-hmm. And then the employer's like, no, you need to show up 100% as who you want to be. And we'll just give you a little bit we'll give you a desk and a chair and a laptop, and you be on your merry way. But we're not going to do anything to do training or encourage you to be a better person. We've done the bare minimum. So I think both parties are, I think you have to show up and be an advocate for yourself. But if the organization is not going to bring to the table what you need, then you have to bring it to do the work and do it either bring it or ask if they have it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that the things that I preach about all day long are improving employee experience. So I do believe that there is a responsibility of the organization to create a thriving workplace where people can do their very
100%.
best work. But that doesn't mean that, it's ice cream sundaes and unicorns all day long.
Yeah.
There is a responsibility of the human, the employee, to also take agency and to handle these situations also from their side as well. I think it's a delicate balance.
There is, and it depends on the organization. I mean, I've worked in so many different companies, and are they embodying what they say through the mission statement, vision statement,
That's right,
code of conduct, whatever? Are they really embodying it, or is that just lip service and a box checking exercise?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, if the guiding principles on the wall do not actually translate to reality, and by the way, one way you can check that is if you work in HR and you haven't looked at your Glassdoor reviews recently.
100%.
Glassdoor.com, you see where there's anonymous reviews from your past very, very angry employees. And obviously anybody that's, going so far to build a profile on Glassdoor and then actually write a review, they're going to be on the farthest side of the spectrum, the really angry ones. But I do think that there is some grain of truth there. Like if they are going to that level to say, God, it was terrible working out there because of this, this, and this. This is really information that needs to be looked at, because if there's one, there's likely hundreds of them out there, right?
You're very much so. And I mean, you make a very good point. If you have one that's like a disgruntled worker, and then you have a consensus that's maybe more middle or positive, then you have something that's just a full-on disgruntled worker. But if you're seeing year after year, month after month, kind of the same type of theme that's developing, then that's definitely something to take consideration for a grain of salt, that there is some truth that lies in what is going on.
Yeah. So in that moment, like right before someone reacts, somebody loses their ish, what's the single most important pause or reset that they can use to regain clarity and agency in that moment?
Taking a deep breath and just holding it for a second. Because like I said, when you are in that moment of the fight or flight, you're not breathing anymore. Usually you're doing very shallow breathing, almost hyperventilating. That's why a lot of times people end up having a panic attack, is that they're not breathing. They're just so consumed, and the body is now overflowing with all these chemicals in the body and they stop breathing normally to where they're almost hyperventilating. So if you can at least remember to take a pause and breathe really deeply, it expands the diaphragm, which stimulates the vagus nerve in the body. And then that will start helping release those chemical reactions.
I think that this also translates in the virtual world as well as the, face-to-face in real life situations. Like if I get an email that really gets under my skin, or somebody said something that kind of pokes and jabs right in my very sensitive little spot, I personally try to wait. Like don't immediately respond back to that Slack message or that email or that text. Like literally waiting as much as like 24 hours before I respond. Makes sure that I'm regulating my own central nervous system and I'm not responding in a, you should know, and send. Because like once you've sent it, then you're like, well, there it is.
I can't take that back.
You're perpetuating the, what I call it kind of like being a porcupine. You've got your quills out and you're very much on the defense. And if two porcupines are fighting each other, it's just,
Oh yeah. It's not going to end well.
It's not going to end well. And it's not really resolving anything, right? Speak more into that.
Well, what I want to bring up is what you're talking about is a very good point, is when you get agitated or something is triggering you, another part of self-awareness is recognizing, did I sleep well last night? Am I in a fight with somebody that's not even work related? When was the last time I ate? When was the last time I drank water? Am I drinking too much caffeine? Like, these are things that if I am not showing up at 100%, I'm going to be triggered easier. I'm going to be reactive more easily. So if you wake up in the morning, you realize like, oh my gosh, I slept like crap last night. Like, I'm just going to have to give myself grace today and be really mindful. Like, okay, that means George in accounting is probably going to be on my short list today. Therefore, if I have to talk to George, I need to make sure that I'm mindful of what I'm saying. Because when you have that self-awareness, it's actually very empowering to say, okay, I'm going to give myself grace today, and I'm just going to do the best that I can. But I realize that I need to be more mindful of how I sound and what I'm doing because this is affecting me. I mean, maybe you heard just bad news. I mean, things happen to us throughout the day, but it's being aware of like, okay, right now is not the time to have that conversation with my boss. I need to put a pin in that and come back to that later. And those are things where I don't think we give ourselves enough grace to recognize how we're showing up that day. And if we're not 100%, that's okay. We're not going to be 100%. And just be okay with not being okay.
Yeah. That makes me think of a episode that we did many years ago. I'll put the link in the show notes. Again, everything we're talking about today in this episode, you can find over at thesimplifiers.com. But I had spoken to Terry Cole. She's the author of Boundaries Boss. And she talks specifically about this and breaking down like simple, practical tips on when you're dealing with what she calls boundary busters. You've set the boundary. You said, when you speak to me like this, this makes me feel like this. So in response, I will do this. But they just continue to hit and bounce and go past the boundary, no matter how much you've said it. There's some really great information in that episode in particular of how do you really navigate those waters. And again, remove yourself from the situation so that you're not exploding in an emotional way, but you're taking good care of yourself and staying professional as well.
Exactly. No, and I think that's where when you're talking about being triggered, what is triggering me about? It's like being able to, that goes back to self-awareness. Is there something that is in the past that's triggering me, that this person reminds me of something? Or is it just, like you're saying, death by a thousand cuts, that like this is just keeps going on and on and on. And now it's just to a point where it triggers me. It's just being mindful of what is causing me to react this way and what can I do to change the way that I'm reacting.
Yeah, because ultimately nobody wants to leave a job. There's nobody, especially not in this job market. People don't want to leave a job and have to go find another job and then rebuild again. The ultimate goal is to figure out a way to resolve whatever the conflict or friction is in this job, unless it is in fact truly a devastated team and culture that is beyond repair. Right?
Yes. And that's my goal with the book is whatever you want to decide, if you want to stay or if you're looking to make a move, being able to make that from a calm, rational mind, that you're not making a knee-jerk reaction, very reactionary, and you say, like, I'm just going to quit, and you walk out, and the next morning you're like, oh, dear God, what did I just do? Like, I can't unwrap that. Like, I'm stuck with the consequences. Whereas if you can just do a little work on yourself and figure out, okay, I realize I don't want to stay here. What do I need to do to find another job? Do I need another certificate? Do I need to work on some skill sets? What do I need to do to prepare myself to be more marketable? But do something that gives you the ability to feel like you have some control or agency of what you're doing in your life instead of just sitting in it and feeling stuck.
And I'm going to say the unpopular thing right now. If it's you and you've now, you've not done the work on you, which a lot of times comes back to like emotional intelligence and really doing that self-assessment. If maybe the problem is you go get a new job, the same situations and patterns keeps replicating. The common denominator is you. Right?
Yes. And I admit that was me. I realized going from job to job, I blame the culture, the people, the company, it wasn't them. I realized it was me. I was the one having all these unrealistic expectations of what the company should give me or the culture or whatever, how I was showing up. And like you're saying about emotional intelligence, that's when it became such a problem with my health. I'm like, I really need to evaluate, how am I showing up? How am I showing up as an employee? How am I showing up as a person? Would I want to interact with myself? And that's when I became really sick. I was like, I can't be this person. I can't even help. How can I help anybody else if I can't even help myself? So that's when I really realized, like, I need to take a major step back and figure out, what do I need to do to be a better version of myself so I can show up differently and not blame everybody around me for my circumstances, that I need to own what I am doing and where I want my life to go.
Yes. You guys, the book is called Surviving the Toxic Workplace from an HR Insider, How to Reclaim Your Power, Peace, and Happiness. You can find that wherever books are sold or even your local bookshop. I highly recommend, just a good little weekend read there. But I think these things also help because it's just the tools in your tool belt to help you get back to thriving at work. So I recommend taking a look at that book. So Terry, as we wrap up, there's a few questions I like to ask everyone who comes on the podcast, rapid fire. And here we go. First off, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Yeah. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I actually write about it in the book, The Circle of Influence. I call it the circle of concern in the book. It's just realizing we spend so much time worrying about things that we have no control over. And he really talks about really owning your life and your circumstances and how empowering that is to take 100% responsibility for whatever happens. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but when you own everything that is you, what you're doing, even how you're acting, that's where your freedom lives.
1,000%. We'll link that in the show notes if you guys haven't read it yet. Again, over at the Simplifiers.com. Somebody in your network, somebody that you know personally, that you just feel is up to brilliant things. We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, one day maybe we'll have them on the podcast. Who would that be?
I would like to recommend my speaking coach, Caleb Spittler. I met him probably 3 years ago, but he's helped me with public speaking, developing my speech. But he is very much about the connection with people and how you connect with the audience and the words and being vulnerable and being real. He's probably the most down-to-earth, real person, and he talks about communication and his public speaking and how important communication is, and how, especially nowadays, it can get so sideways so quickly. But from a connection between human to human, he really values how important that is, even more today than ever.
Love it. We'll link him in the show notes for you guys as well. I believe simplicity and gratitude go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for my health. If you don't have your health, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It literally is life-changing if you don't have your health. A couple weeks ago, I fell and sprained my wrist on ice, and I wasn't able to work out. I wasn't able to eat with my hand, and wasn't able to do the things. Like, it took such a long time to do everything with one hand, and just made me really realize like how precious life is and your health, and how quickly it can change, and not to take it for granted.
And that just goes back to everything that we've just been talking about.
Yeah.
Like, it boggles my mind how many of us are out there working jobs that we absolutely hate, and, are just in this ball of stress and anxiety and all that's taking a toll on our physical health and our mental health. Like, there's got to be a better way. And I'm just so grateful for you and your voice in the world, and this book helping people to see that there's a different way. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary, for having this conversation. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. So in the show notes, you'll be able to find her website, innerauthoritycompany.com. simplifiers.com, and also link to her LinkedIn. And I highly recommend connecting with her on that platform. Let her know that you heard this episode as well. Now, you also have this thing where people can want to, if they want to read a sample of your book, all they have to do is text the word power to 33777. That's power to 33777, and they're going to receive a free sample of your book. How cool is that?
Yes. I want everyone to at least read the first 2 chapters. It's basically kind of the state of the union of what life is like in the workplace, the statistics, and then kind of how I got to this journey, how I got to this point where I just need to let people know that the way you're feeling, you're not alone. And there are resources, and I wanted to create a resource for others that feel like I see you and I know what you're going through.
Yeah. So my last question for you is this. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and they are kind of wincing a bit like, oh, I think they're talking about me. And my situation at work is really not great. And I do dread going in on Monday morning. What's one thing you could whisper in their ear right now just to encourage them in this moment?
I'd say you got this. You can do it. You have to believe in yourself that I can make a change, and I can start today to do that. But you got this.
Terry, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.